The meeting is now being live streamed and recorded.
Good morning. Call to order the meeting of the Cuyahoga County Convention Facilities Development Corporation for the date of Friday, April 29th. Let the time be reflected at 8:33 a.m. Julie, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Matt Carroll. David Gilbert.
Here. I'm here.
Here.
Majid Makloof. Trevor McAleer.
Here.
Michael Obi.
Here.
Obi.
Here.
Tim Oftermatt.
Here.
Mayor Sellers.
Here.
And Roshonda Smith.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time for joining us this morning. Thank you for any public that is watching as well. We'll move on our agenda. We will start with the, we have a vacant board seat, seat number 9, that is up for adoption today. We have been presented with Mr. Jeff Epstein, who is the Chief of Integrated Development for the City of Cleveland, has been submitted by the Cuyahoga County Council for us for consideration this morning. You should have in your packets the bio sheet on Mr. Epstein. Before we move to any vote, Jeff's with us, correct, Julie?
I'm here.
Yes.
All right, welcome,
I'm
Jeff.
That's correct.
Jeff, you want to say anything before I ask the board for anybody on the board want to make any commentary before we take the vote?
No, just glad to be here and be nominated, and looking forward to serving.
Well, I will say this, Jeff, we welcome you after we take this vote. We'll welcome you before we take this vote. It's a very engaging board. It has been very diligent about the things that we worked on the time that I've been here. So I'm proud to be able to serve with you, and I'm sure that the city of Cleveland's interests are entwined in the interests of this board here as well. So with no further comments or concerns, I'm going to ask for a vote.
Mayor, it's Trevor. I just wanted to add to that real quick.
Go ahead, Trevor.
The council president, this seat number 9 is the council president's appointment, and exactly to your point, Mayor, just the ongoing relationship with the new administration. Council president thought it was important to have a city of Cleveland representative on this board, considering the amount of business and interaction that we have with this board and the convention center with the city. So I'm excited that Jeff accepted, and council president talking with Mayor Bibb.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just for a second, Sam, it's just
Sure,
great to have the city represented, and great to have somebody like Jeff, just a great collaborator, awesome person. So looking forward to working with you.
Excellent. Is there any other comments? All right, for part of the order, let us go to, is there a motion to accept the adoption of Mr. Jeff Epstein and to take seat board number 9 for the CCFDC?
So moved.
All right, there's a motion made by Mr. Obi, second by Mr. Carroll. All in favor? No, roll call, Julie, please. I'm sorry.
Matt Carroll.
Yes.
David Gilbert.
Yes.
Majid Makloof.
Yes.
Trevor McAleer.
Yes.
Michael Obi.
Yes.
Tim Oftermatt.
Yes.
Mayor Sellers.
Yes.
Roshonda Smith.
Yes.
All right, welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
I appreciate your service here. All right, so we have some renewals you have on the screen before you. These are the seats that are filled currently. All the seats are now filled for the CCCFDC. We have expiring terms coming at the end of 23 for Michael Obi, Tim Oftermatt, and Matt Carroll, if I'm reading this correct, Julie. So these will be the next ones up for consideration in 2023. Any questions or comments from anyone? All right, thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is the approval of the minutes. You should have received in your packet the minutes from the last board meeting. Are there any comments, questions, or corrections? All right, hearing none, I ask for a motion of adoption.
So moved. Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the minutes are approved as so written. We will now move to the portion of the agenda that talks about the project update. And let me just give some hindsight here. I'm working offsite, but I'm working my way down to the Global Center now. And I think, Majid, you're going to take the meeting from after the presentation of Dave, and then I shall see you guys shortly. All right.
I will. And Mayor, just before we go, we need to amend the agenda to add an item at the very end, which is the compensation of ASM that George
Okay.
will do the presentation to us. So I move to amend the agenda to add that item.
All right. So there's a motion made to agenda item to add the item of compensation. It's been moved and
It's
seconded.
actually in there as an incentive fee vote.
Yeah,
Okay.
Oh.
yeah, there's it says the vote, but that's also the discussion and the vote is all that is.
Okay. So we're already good then. All right. Perfect. So, we've been working on the CCCFDC board has been looking at the revitalization of the Global Center, extensively working with numerous partners. Obviously, Destination Cleveland has done some work for us as well, some consulting firms. I'm going to turn this portion over to Mr. David Gilbert and let Dave talk about the project update.
Great, thanks, Brad, and thanks, everybody. A good number of people in this room have been involved in the efforts that have really taken a lot of shape over the past 5 or 6 weeks. What we were asked to do was really help to gather all the facts, frame the argument for the convention center expansion in a way that makes the most sense and shows the community that doing this project would provide significant return on investment back to the county. And particular thanks to Emily Lauer on Destination Cleveland staff, our VP of Communications, and also Rob Falls and his team who have, he's a Destination Cleveland board member and they've done some pro bono work in helping put this together. I'll give you a handful of things that have come together and are moving, but I will say, I think as we've dug in, gathered every fact, and again, so many people, I'm not going to keep thanking individuals, lots around the table who've been a big part of it, but it's very clear, even more clear, I believe, that this makes absolute and total sense. And, from Destination Cleveland's point of view, we look at this for the community and for the customer. And in both of those ways, it's very clear. A couple things that we have put together. One is a presentation that we are scheduled to present to County Council a week from Tuesday, May 10th. Thanks to Trevor for helping us set that up. And it's not meant to have any ask. It's meant to put out there the facts and really give County Council an opportunity to see the project, the rationale, but also from the bigger picture of what the convention center project as a whole, what the travel and tourism industry as a whole have done and meant to the community since it was built. And also laying out very, very carefully what's being proposed, how it's being proposed, how the funding is being proposed, what would be proposed to be paid for by this body, what would be proposed to be paid for by the county. And I think as we've all seen things written in the media, there's a number of things out there that have what I believe would be some false assumptions or some certainly some stretches. And I think this presentation has done that. We decided initially not to be immediately reactionary to some things that have been in the media, some op-eds and others. And we wanted to first make sure that we gathered the facts and had them to be presented the right way. There should be this weekend, we've submitted an op-ed into cleveland.com, which we hope will be in this weekend. We had a terrific meeting yesterday with Crane's editorial board and feel like they now have a much better understanding. Jeff and Ron and I met with them and think it went really well, and Emily was with us as well. We have a great set of FAQs, so it will be given to everybody on this board. So just so they understand, again, everybody has the facts as we believe them to be, it is certainly not my job, Destination Cleveland's job, I think, nor I believe our board's job to tell the county or suggest to the county exactly what they ought to do, but we believe that the facts will show that the investment in this project is the highest and best use for the future of this building, and would absolutely provide a very significant ROI, not only back to the community, but back to the county by investing in the project. Lastly, I'll just mention, then just open up for any questions. We're also gearing up. Destination Cleveland, as you all know, we did our own study about a little over a year ago, hired CSL to look at all of the assets around this general area, what we would consider a convention center district. The convention center, public hall, the hotels, the open space all around this area, to give ideas and suggestions of how do we collectively take these different assets and make them better for the customer, whether it's operationally, physically, I would almost even say emotionally, in terms of seeing all of this as one package. And we're going to be gathering all of the key relevant stakeholders over the next 60 days to begin a process of actually trying to outline a plan and see if there are things that we could even get done by the time ASAE is here in 2024. A lot riding on that for our community in the hosting of that convention in 2024. So, Mr. Chairman, that's my report, and happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Dave?
I would just like to add to what he said, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
First of all, thank you, David and Emily, for you've really done great work at putting together the talking points and the FAQs and the presentations. On top of what David's mentioned, yesterday we had our architects and Ellis and our salespeople and Destination Cleveland salespeople and many of our clients in this room to see a presentation to solicit client feedback. And I thought it was a very, very good session. George was set in on part of it. I don't know if he wants to add to my words.
It was an excellent session. It was interesting to hear people that book conventions tell us that they needed additional space here. The one lady said we book 10,000 meetings a year, and she said, I'm from Cleveland. I'd like to book more in Cleveland, but we just don't have the facility to do it. And they're looking forward to this accomplishing, that goal, so that we'll have a facility.
I would just say, for us as board members, we have a fiduciary duty to do what's in the best interest of the project that we manage, this facility. And I think many of us have been investigating this for a very long time. We reached out to outside professional consultants. We've done everything we can do. And I think I feel very comfortably that I'm satisfying my fiduciary duty by by proceeding with that project. And I think that's where I'd like to keep the focus in terms of what is our fiduciary duty. There will always be criticism of everything we do, and there will always be other ideas that may be based on this or that. But we've spent quite a bit of time in terms of what we do with this, and very strongly believe that this is the best course of action that we have in front of us. Go ahead, Trevor.
Mr. Chairman, this question might be more for Mr. Applebaum, but in terms of timeline, when is, I guess, our deadline in order to meet the 2024 convention that Dave referenced in his presentation? Or how are we doing on that timeline?
Actually, I could go through it, but Ellis, why don't you, because you have it right there.
Yes, really the timeline is now. In order for us to keep moving forward, we need to select a design builder, which is something that you're going to be doing in terms of shortlisting those firms in executive session. But then get them on board and complete the design process, because the idea is to complete the design process by the end of this year and hopefully start construction the beginning of next year as soon as we possibly can. The duration of the project is going to be about 18 months. So we want to be able to be done roughly around the beginning of the second quarter of 2024. So that gives the global center, or not, shouldn't say the global center, the new convention center expansion ability to ramp up, get the space in order for this big convention that you have in August.
To put a finer point on it, what's happening right now is we are moving through the design phases. So for several months, we are in a design scenario. Now the design builder will come on board, and the design builder will work hand in hand with our criteria architect team doing cost reviews, constructability reviews. But what's going to happen is around the end of the year, and I know why you're asking this question, around the end of the year, we will be in a position to get a guaranteed maximum price, so that we will know exactly what the builder will be able to negotiate and know what the price will be. They will be looking at their competitive pricing from their subs. So it'll be at the end of the year that we go from the current funding that we have to having to make sure that the funding is in place for construction toward the end of the year.
Thank you for that. I think that makes even Dave Gilbert's presentation on the 10th even more important, because, I mean, as most of you know in this room, right, usually when it hits the council, there's legislation in front of them and that they're being asked to vote. And I think there's the value in providing that high-level presentation next, or 2 weeks from, or in about 2 weeks. So, and then obviously the question becomes with council and the administration when legislation will come forward. That's kind of my basis for asking about the timeline. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Dave? All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, sorry, can I, just to George's point about how he heard about the 10,000, the individuals that put the 10,000 conventions on meetings every year. Do we plan on having them come to the council meeting? I mean, are they going to present? Are they going to be part of the presentation?
Yes, we did talk to them about doing that and contacting their councilman, that type of thing too, so that the people know, because we're only here, they're only hearing one side of it. So this way, they've got the people that actually use the convention center.
Okay,
saying,
I think that could be helpful.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll turn to the architect presentation. George, or if you want to, Ron, if you want to introduce who's going to speak.
Sure, I'll kick this off. We have online Rob, who's going to do the presentation. And Rob, I hope you don't mind saying, hopefully I'm not violating any medical acts here, but Rob would be here in person. However, he has injured his back, so he's having to stay home and do this online. But he'll do the majority of the presentation today. We're about 2/3 of the way, I think we said yesterday, 2/3 of the way through design. Some things that you're going to see today still need some massaging. We did have the input yesterday from the clients that we're going to take a look at and try to incorporate as much as we can there. And I just think that TVS has really done a great job thus far. So without further ado, Rob, Paul, take it away.
Thanks, Ron. And let me see, I'm trying to advance the slide. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'd like to thank the board, all the stakeholders, ASM, Ellis and his team for helping us get to where we are today. Also probably should acknowledge all the work of our consultants and especially our associated architect, Moody Nolan, and pulling all of this together. And then Paul's there in the room. So if you like the presentation, I'll take credit for it. If you don't, Paul put it together. So thanks. So really just, we have 3 quick items. We wanted to show you where we are in the schedule. We've already brushed over that a little bit. We wanted to show the schematic design concepts as they've developed to date, and then reiterate what the next steps are. As Ron mentioned, we're 2/3 of the way through our schematic design phase. And if you're not familiar with design construction projects, there's essentially 3 phases on the design side: schematic design, design development, and then documentation. And so after this meeting and with y'all's input, we'll be finalizing our pricing package about the same time the design builder is on board. They will then price that package and do their constructability review. We'll be meeting with them and working with them to come back and present to you a consolidated project for approval at the end of the schematic phase before we move into design development phase. And that will essentially show the project aligned with the budget and the constructability comments of the construction manager. Then in the design development phase, we will work with the design builder and their architect as we further develop the details of the project. They will again confirm the price. We will have that approved, and then we will complete the bridging documentation phase while the final negotiations on the GMP are being completed. And then the project goes into the design builder side. Their architect will complete the construction documentation and begin construction while the documentation is ongoing. Where we are to date, we've been working with y'all last year on the master plan. We were given our notice to proceed in February. And since then, we've been doing programming and design workshops, refining the scope, getting more detail built into the package. Today, we are giving you an update. I don't believe there's any action requested at this update, just for feedback and comments. And then the design builder selection is ongoing. And then sometime around the end of June, we will come back with the consolidated schematic design presentation. Any questions on that before I move on? Okay. So this project is simply to convert the March space for the Global Center into meeting space for the Convention Center. And this is following a lot of trends in the industry. Events are demanding more meeting space for every given square foot of exhibit space. While exhibit space is still important, the meeting space is every year becomes more important. I think where Cleveland, as a destination, where you on the marketplace is, since the building was expanded and then the Hilton was added, your numbers have improved pretty significantly every year up to the beginning of the pandemic. And so the market has responded very strongly to what you are presenting to them. And then obviously the whole industry had a little bit of a hiccup during the pandemic, Numbers have come back very strong. By last fall, attendance was back to somewhere around 60% of pre-pandemic. In January, even with Omicron, it was about 75%. The latest numbers have not come out yet for the next quarter, but the general industry consensus supported by the Center for Exhibition Industry Research is that pre-pandemic attendance will be back in 2023, and the industry will be back into growth mode. So that's kind of what we're working for. And in that context, this project is very well positioned to be complete just as the demand is in full stride. And so to convert the Mart space to meeting space, that means more people. So the Mart space is essentially retail space, and meeting space has a much higher density of people. So we have been working to increase the occupancy and the number of people on each floor. And with that, there's infrastructure that goes along. We have to increase the escalators, stairs, and restrooms to accommodate those more, the movement and use of the space by all those additional people. And then we're converting the space into meeting and pre-function and flexible space. We're adding meeting technology and amenities necessary for it to work properly in its intended use. And then using this part of this project to incorporate the Global Center into a unified Huntington Convention Center of Cleveland campus. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the changes on each level. The image on the left of the screen is as it is today. The image on the right of the screen is what is being proposed. And so at this street level, which we're calling level 1, is probably the most dramatic change. And as we were going through the convention, sports, and leisure information, talking to stakeholders and customers, one of the big opportunities here is to add what is essentially a second ballroom to the existing Lakeside Ballroom. And so we found an opportunity by pushing the building out to the street to more than double the square foot in the existing ballroom there. And so that will have a very dramatic impact. It will allow multiple simultaneous events that if each require a ballroom, and then it will give you flexibility on how the two spaces are used, where you can meet in one and eat in the other, or it will allow this global center space to be used as for standalone events more comprehensively. So in addition to the addition of the function space and increased subdivisibility in the function space, so it's more flexible for your customers, we're adding an additional back of house space for storage and food service to support that space. And then in the atrium, you can see the difference between the left and the right side relative to the stairs and escalators. So I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is a new stair that's inside the atrium that connect all levels. And then these are your new escalators inside the atrium that will connect you up to the upstairs. We're maintaining the existing elevators, converting one of them into a two-sided elevator so it can support the spaces above. So from inside the atrium, this is the new proposed look of the building. This is a very iconic structure. And our goal with the design here is to complement what's actually going on. We're not trying to compete with what makes this a very successful space, but we're trying to add these insertions in a very complementary way to the existing design. So you can see this stair that's being added on one side of the atrium, and then we're resculpting the face of the ballroom. And then really on the upper levels, what's happening behind the guardrails and glass is being reconfigured, but we're not reconfiguring any of the perimeter of the atrium other than the escalator and stair. This is a view of inside of the new expanded ballroom. So you will see it'll have a window overlooking the street that can be blacked out, and then enhanced subdivision functionality within the space, maintaining the same ceiling height that you have in there now. From the outside, you can see as that ballroom space pushes out, we're continuing essentially the design language of the building. And so we're using the same glass technology and glass. We have a little bit of intervention on the facade to allow the second floor balcony to work. But essentially, the intent of this is you have a spectacular building. We're respecting that with these interventions. And then back inside the atrium, looking across the other side from where we looked before, you can see the new escalators within the atrium space. And so the way the circulation will work is from this is the pre-function space of the ballroom. There'll be a short escalator that will bring you up to this vestibule, and then you will ride up to the second level, loop back up to the third level, loop back up to the fourth level. So very simple. We're adding floor slabs within the atrium. So this balcony here is where the existing balcony is, and these escalators are all in front of the existing balcony. On the second level, you have already converted these spaces into meeting room spaces. And basically the character of these spaces are basically a guide and inspiration for the character of the rest of the meeting room spaces. You have a number of these demountable glass partitions. Our design intent is to reuse those and as much of the track and infrastructure to minimize the overall cost. So when you come up to the second level, you will land right here. And then you will walk around to this pre-function space that is overlooking a outdoor terrace that is built on the roof of the ballroom expansion. And so that will give you a large, mostly column-free meeting room space with a generous pre-function and outdoor terrace. And this will be very well, this outdoor space is very, very popular. It sells very, very well. And the fact that it's grade separated, so it's securable and you don't have people walking out onto it from the street, makes it even more useful. I want to also mention that you can see this is the existing small boardroom there. We're maintaining that. It's a wonderful space. And then we're reconfiguring some of these spaces to provide back of house access off of the service and staging and FF&E storage, more meeting rooms, and then reconfiguring, reconfiguring these corner spaces is creative meeting spaces. And these are meant to be flexible, creative spaces. They can be used for events. They could be used for pre-functions, receptions, breakouts. They could be branded and sponsored for the event. And it's a really unique opportunity to present something to your customers that your competitors can't. So this is a view standing in that new large, mostly column-free meeting space, looking out into the atrium. And then this is a view standing on the roof terrace, looking into the pre-function. And then this is just a reminder, this is the existing boardroom you have there. It's a great space and it's being maintained as it is. So on the third level, this is essentially existing Mart space. There's been a little bit of reconfiguration onto this space. And what we're doing here is you would once again arrive right here on the escalators. Here we have the meeting space pushed against the outside of the building, and the terrace is below here with a large pre-function space facing the atrium. And reconfiguring this side of the building similar to downstairs, so it will function very similar as large meeting room spaces. And then once again, we have additional meeting rooms being built over here enhance FF&E and food service support working off the freight elevator, and then another one of these creative hospitality spaces.
Hey, Rob, this is Ron King. On
Yes,
that
Ron.
creative hospitality, oh, you're going to talk about it right now. Never mind.
Yep,
I'll wait till
yep.
you're finished.
So these are unique. These spaces are really unique opportunities. So this is some images as these spaces exist now. They're high-end construction, high-end finish, and quite frankly, somewhat more finished than the budget's would allow us if we would try to rip it out and reconfigure it. And so it gives us the opportunity to come in with some altercations to the space to make them work better, additional furniture and functionality. But you can see from a customer point of view, this is going to be a very desirable space. You have a couple small meeting room breakout spaces. This area will be reconfigured as a grab and go pantry for food service provisions that can be serviced off of the corridor. You have kind of a social seating area here, and then some flexible seating around the corner. We'll take out this desk and put some more furniture here. So think of these spaces almost like an airport lounge, where a customer can come and take it over for a specific event or reception, or it can be used for attendees just to lounge, catch up on work, socialize, impromptu meetings. You know, what we're seeing at convention centers is the real value, the deals that are getting made are less happening on the show floor and in the concourses, but in these creative meeting spaces where buyers and sellers can get together and get a deal done. So we think that this is a great asset that's already here that we're going to be reconfiguring and making better. Did that cover it, Ron?
Yes, it did. And I'll add, Rob, since you weren't able to make it yesterday, that our clients that saw this yesterday were very, very excited about that space.
Yeah, it's a robust space, and it's going to give you something that's unique and really custom and bespoke for your market. And I think that's the real interesting opportunity here. Going up to the fourth level, right now, this is the courts. So if you've peeked in there or gotten through security in the courts, they have basically opened all of this up. They have reconfigured the area over to the right here as a courtroom space, and then there's some existing offices back here. The idea here is to try to create some larger bulk space. So this would be a large flexible space that could be used for tabletop exhibits, assemblies, large meetings. But basically it's intended to be very flexible. So customers can come in. This could function as a small exhibit space. Think of a medical event where they have the poster areas. This would be an ideal spot up there with high level views over the city and the atrium to do the kind of poster events or receptions, and then building in additional flexible meeting spaces over on this side. So if you've been up there now, this is a drywall wall here. We don't have the glass partitions here on this side. So to be able to maximize this space, we're reconfiguring this slightly just to simplify it, since that's all going to have to be new construction. And then over here, there's another one of these reception spaces that's partially fitted out. And the idea is to treat this one so it feels more like a flow into the public space, but continues with the furniture package and ceiling treatments that'll allow it to feel like that airport lounge space. And then on the outside, we have some work to do relative to approvals on sign, but the design intent is to treat the Global Center facade or the new Convention Center Cleveland facade here in the same vein as the other monuments around the mall. So if you look at the Civic Auditorium, it has some engraved naming on the top. And then the naming rights sign, the Huntington, could be the sign that designates the naming rights of the building, but the name has more of a civic feel that we hope and feel will be more acceptable as it has to go through the review process. And so kind of a dignified civic feel on this side of the building. And then that gives us the opportunity on the other side of the building to make more identification sign over here that spells out the full Huntington Convention Center of Cleveland, backlights them. And then it didn't make it in the renderings, but there's been discussion about taking this portion of the spandrel glass, which is what we call glass when there's no space behind it, but it's like looking into the ceiling plenum, and putting screens back there so that that space can be used for signage and identification of what's going on in the building, potential revenue generating elements. And so any questions on the design update?
This is Majid Makhlouf. Before, just a couple quick comments, and I'm going to ask Ron to speak very quickly to this, and then we'll open it up to questions and discussion for the architect and Ron and everybody. 2 quick points. Number one is, obviously, we're looking at drawings, and I just want to be very careful about the naming. That building does not have a name. Huntington does not own the rights to that
Absolutely.
building. It obviously, in the future, it would make sense to have a commonality of naming rights, but that's a different discussion that we will have to have down the road. The signage there does not, it's there for the purpose of showing how signage would look like, whoever ends up having that naming right. And number two, to show that part of the issues that we're trying to resolve actually is, even though right now the entry to the convention center is on Lakeside, from a practical standpoint, what happens at the convention center every day when we have events is most of our customers actually enter and come to the convention from that entrance. So signage on that side and the entire place looking as one center makes a lot of sense. So that's the purpose of the signage showing there, but no description as to who owns anything at this point in terms of the naming right or what the name of the building will be. Number two,
thank you for that clarification. I got ahead of my knittings there.
Oh, no worries. I just wanted to make sure that the record is clear on it. Number two, with respect to, I just want the record to be very clear that we've extensively looked at very different models in terms of how we could do this project, whether this being the best and highest use and how we could do it. And we've tried every way humanly possible to shrink it or to do it in different phases. And we could, even if you were to do this in phases, anybody can talk to how this increases the costs, because you're bidding it multiple times, you're paying for the same thing twice if you were to do it in stages, the insurance costs that come with it, and even the biggest cost is the disruption to the business every time you're doing part of this project. We really, after extensive studies and looking at every possible way to shrink this or do it in different stages, concluded that that's the only feasible way to do it. And I think later at some other point, maybe Ellis and Jeff, and I'm not asking them to comment on this point because I don't want to talk about that part of it, why it would cost more and the feasibility of the building, the interuse of all of that stuff. I think at some point we'll address it. But I want Ron to comment on the synergy between the different uses we're doing here. Why, in terms of the return on investment. We thought about just building, the meeting space and not expanding the ballroom, but that doesn't give us the return on investment that we're trying to do. If we expand the ballroom but don't do the meeting space, so if just from a business standpoint and the business case, why the synergy between the different uses has to be done together at one.
And Majid, I just want to let Ron do that. One fact that we have talked about, and I would add it to what you already saw. In our market, the market we compete with, it's really important to have 2 functional ballrooms. Either because large conventions use a second ballroom, or because sometimes in the building you want 2 events going on, each of which require a ballroom. Right now, our second ballroom is 10,000 square feet, as you saw, divisible by 2. In the industry, our competitive set, the people that we compete with, their number 2 ballroom averages 22,400 square feet. So we are half the size of a second ballroom in our industry, plus the fact ours is only divisible in two, 5,000 each. You saw here we have all the options for increased usage of it. It can be divided. Actually, there's 6 divisions, but you can divide it more than 6 ways if you think about it. So I just wanted to make that point because we talked about where we are in competition, but with the ballroom itself, that's a real important point, Ron.
Well, thanks, Jeff. What Jeff said is absolutely correct. And talking to our clients yesterday, so don't take it from me necessarily, take it from our clients. It gives several opportunities. Many times on a large convention, they have the ballroom, the big ballroom that they'll use for either food service or their general session. And then they need the second ballroom for breakout space. Or vice versa. And that happens oftentimes with larger conventions. These are conventions that David Gilbert and his group, Destination Cleveland, have shown we don't have the space for. And so we would now have the space. The other thing that comes in, as Jeff said, we can do 2 totally different events simultaneously. So, and this came out yesterday, the clients love that they could come in and have a smaller convention, and it's all self-contained within this facility. So you're really getting much more flexibility. But on the ballroom part of it, let's talk about that. The ballroom is your biggest return on investment because that's where your food and beverage, your audio visual, your electrical, all of those things come into play. That's really what drives then everything else going up. And I hope that answered your question.
It does. And I think that's the confusion that sometimes people have is why are you expanding the ballroom? Why not just do the meeting space, or why not do one or the other? We need the meeting space and we need the ballroom. And I just wanted to be very clear why we're doing it all at once from a business standpoint. Otherwise, we're spending dollars but not getting the return on investment without doing it.
Correct. And I also want to add, Majid, if I may, that, and I didn't bring it with me, but the Convene magazine just this last month did an article on what will convention centers coming out of COVID look like. And it talked about flexible outdoor space. Well, we're doing that. It talked about larger circulation space. We're doing that. So all of those things that quite frankly, there were 5 different categories, and we're checking the box on each one of those categories with this that are what customers are looking for coming out of COVID.
Go ahead.
I want to highlight one point with that question too, because I think what you brought up is critical in terms of what we're going to be talking about to a lot of folks over the next month. I think we're actually in a very fortuitous time. We have a great facility. It's 9 years old, and our competitors are all expanding, have or are currently. And we can go across the board at what those are. But we're very fortunate that the space that we have to expand in a cost-effective way is kind of using the vernacular of skating where the puck is going. You know, when you heard from Rob where the puck is going, and what Ron just said is what the customers are looking for now is larger and flexible meeting space. Something that I think if they were looking for more exhibition space, we'd be in trouble. That's incredibly expensive to do, and we don't have the space for it. We're actually lucky that what is being looked at, we have the space to configure and do a little bit of addition. And in overall, in comparison to the cost of this facility, in a very cost-effective way, significantly add to what the customer wants.
Thank you. And I just one more quick point on this is just when the convention center and back then the Medical Mart was built out. So many stories. Ron wasn't there, I wasn't there, George wasn't there, many of us were not there when this happened. So we all hear stories in terms of what happened. But to their credit, what was happening back then is they were taking a leap of faith on an untested theory, doing a Medical Mart and see whether it will work or not. You know, you can question the wisdom of what they were doing, but they were doing it based on a leap of faith. What we're doing here is something backed up by actual industry standards. This is a model that we know works. This is not, we're not doing something experimental. We know what we have in our own usage, what works. We have our own customer base that we can test it with. We know how to fill these rooms. So this is actual, based on actual experience and data in terms of how we can fill that space and make it work. But I just wanted to make that comment. So what we're doing here, and when we talk about the return on investment, we're not saying just trust us, or we're testing the market for something. We're saying real, actual market experience shows that this will work that way, which is a very different thing from the history here. But I way overused my time. I'll turn it over to any questions either to the, I apologize to the architects. They're sitting there, and any questions to the team. Trevor.
Just more to follow up on what you said. I mean, for those that weren't here, this journey that we're on, right, started, I want to say probably 3 or 4 years ago, in one room over, when we had our first, I guess, retreat as a board, where I think at that point we had 5 members. And the study by Destination Cleveland that told us how much space we're lacking. And at that time, it was, I think, 3 or 4 local or close convention centers were expanding. So, I mean, it's just interesting how long this has taken us to get to this point. But, I mean, this first started when we got the presentation from Destination Cleveland and their study on the best use of the beginning.
Actually, it was, we had a highest and best use study by CSL.
Oh, CSL, that's right. Yeah, okay.
CSL, this started, just to be clear on that, it had been known for some time that we were thinking about, we knew the medical market, the showroom model was not the highest, we suspected it wasn't the highest best use. So we actually had a highest and best use study. And what that study did is it did 2 things. First of all, it did test the market for this building for other things. It brought real estate folks in. It brought people in who talked about, are the upper floors saleable? Is there a demand for this space for any other purpose? So it did measure that. It's not like it simply made an assumption. At the same time that it did that, though, it said, is there a better use? And that's when CSL actually looked at the convention center needs and what we already knew, and what the market said about what we needed in the convention center. And so it was a combination of saying, not only is there not a higher use for this building, but there's a need for this building. The need is for the convention center. So it was these 2 things coming together, and that's really what that study said. And then it expanded, because then going to Destination Cleveland took a larger look. Actually entered into a second contract with CSL to take a look at the whole district-wide model. And in the district-wide model, Dave, you correct me, but it was apparent that the use of this building for this purpose, actually, it wasn't just about this center, it was about the whole district-wide model of the Destination Cleveland was talking about. But it makes sense in that context also.
I'll even take it a step further, because I remember this vividly. It was my very first event for the CCCFDC before even attending a formal meeting of the board. Before even CSL was retained, is we had a building that we knew whatever was in it was just not working. I mean, it was just going to waste with a very significant investment in it. And we had clients who needed meeting space that we were unable to meet. And we had real actual experience where the people, where we needed meeting space to meet the actual needs of the clients. That led to a work study. We heard from from Dave back then, he wasn't on the board. We heard from the Hilton as to their needs. And then from there, we went on and hired CSL to do the highest and best use. And that's from there to look at, are we missing something here? Can this be used for something else? And that's where we hired CSL. And then from there, it kept going. But it was even before. CSL was hired in response to, we have this dead space that significant millions of dollars were spent on building it. And we had clients who were asking for meeting space that we couldn't meet the needs. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Any other questions?
It's a good reminder. Started really one room over.
Exactly. I remember being at it. It was the very first event I had for CCCFDC. All right. Any questions for before we turn over to the next subject? Any other questions for the architect or Ron? Thank you so very much. Truly appreciate it, guys.
All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it for your patience.
Thank you.
Feel better, Rob.
Okay, thanks.
And Ron, I'll turn it over to the Convention Center update.
All right. Good. So just real briefly, our Q1 update, everyone receives monthly a report in your packet that goes into more detail. But Q1, we hosted 21 events with 53,000 attendees. I will say that what Rob said earlier about coming back at 60%, as a corporation, we were told to budget between 50 and 60% of where we were in 2019. We budgeted at 60%. We have had some events that have continued to cancel. However, a lot of the events that have chosen to continue on have actually outperformed our budget and their expectations. So I think that's a very good sign moving forward. We've had 5 large public and sporting events in March, attracting 14,000 attendees. Thank you to the Sports Commission, the NBA 2022 All-Star Weekend. We had the Legends Award event here. That outperformed budget by over $200,000. So thank you, David, and your group for bringing that in. We were a little concerned about that. The reason that's such a big deal is NBA was very late in the game to tell us what our building was going to be used for. We originally thought that we were going to be a fan experience, and they decided to do that at Public Auditorium. So they wouldn't release our space. We got very frustrated with NBA. They wouldn't release our space. And at one point we thought, well, we're not going to be used at all, but they did that event here and it outperformed budget. So we're very happy with that. They also used a lot of our meeting spaces, offices. So we got good use from them in that. Women in Cybersecurity, fantastic event. And we really need more events like that. So this was a group that came in. They had companies, Fortune 500 companies that were on the showroom floor that were actually recruiting for people, well, for women to come in and work. And again, Destination Cleveland took advantage of that. They set up a booth on the showroom floor to try to encourage people to come to Cleveland and work in Cleveland. I don't know how well that worked out for you guys, but I thought it was very creative. So hopefully that worked out well. E.B. Brown, NARI, which is a home improvement show. NARI was a little weak this year. A really cool one, Association for Challenge Course Technology. These are people that do those challenge courses like out in the woods and things where you zip line or you have your trust fall and that type of thing. These are people that actually set up those courses. So that was an interesting group to have in-house. Ohio Music Education Association, and then again, in joint effort with Destination Cleveland, the Ohio Travel Association. The good news is we started off January really soft, and Steve and I were a little concerned. But as we closed out the first quarter, we're operating $624,000 under budget. So, we're at about $562,000 of a loss where we were budgeted for 1.185. I will tell you some of what also is helping us with that is having the courts here. The courts would like to continue on through June, which we're happy to have them. They've been a great client, probably our largest client. If you talk about how many days they've been in a convention center, our largest client to date, I would think. But that has worked out very well, and they're very happy being over here. We have another slide, Julie. So the sales team booked 30 events, 31,000 hotel room nights, and 79,000 attendees. We are seeing, which is good news, we're seeing that booking window. We used to book in Cleveland inside of 2 years. Typically, conventions book 3 to 5 years out, and we're seeing that booking window go to that 3 to 5 years out. So that's good. I think some of that comes with the maturity of the market. I also think it comes with, again, Destination Cleveland and a change at Destination Cleveland and how they're marketing and selling the city. So we're happy about that. Capital improvements. We're always going through capital improvements. The big one that we've canceled or that we've done so far is our cable television system that we talked about last year and got board approval for. That has been completed. I'm happy to announce that we've increased our staff to over 70, adding 20 new team members. One of them I would like to introduce, sitting behind me, is Cheryl, our new HR manager. We're very, very happy to have her aboard. She's been doing a great job with recruiting. We have, well, I can't announce it yet, but it looks like we're hiring or promoting a director of events. We lost our director of events to Destination Cleveland. We're promoting our internal to a director of events. The reason that's not official yet is we're still waiting some approvals from corporate, but I feel confident that that's going to happen. We have posted for a director of operations. That's another position that we lost. We have some candidates, strong candidates on that. And some event management. So we're rebuilding the team and at a great time to do it. 2022 highlights, we have Fan Expo going on right now. And in fact, if any of the board members would like passes, we have a couple of passes we can give to you if you're interested in seeing that. That's a really interesting show to see. I came in yesterday behind the Ghostbusters car, so that was interesting. I had to call Mike and ask if there was something going on down in the Utilidor if Slimer had been seen, and I didn't know something. So that's going on. Content Marketing World, which is always a great event for us. Blacks in Government, the National Training Institute, National Association for the Education of Young Children, which is going to be this summer, and National Retail Federation, which is a great one, and then stand by for the FBI Academy. That concludes my report, and I'll take any questions.
And go ahead.
Not a question, but I did want to make a comment. It just, again, it just something that, as we spend a lot of time on the past subject, when you look at the budget, it's, to me, I feel strongly about how well this building is managed. And if you look at the budget, and that's the kind of thing that allows for CCCFDC to take on part of the project that's being proposed and a lot less of it on the county general fund. I just think that is a point that shouldn't be lost in all of this, that the solid operations, financial operations of this building is allowing it to take on a good part of that project. So
Thank you. We do have a great team. And actually, the quick comment that I wanted to make is it just one of the items listed there shows the ingenuity of our team in terms of, you know, the courts being able to use this facility, and every comment that I've heard from the courts has been extremely positive in terms of the use of this facility. But I think it's an example that shows how our team was able to adapt right away during the pandemic when travel was cut back. They were able to make use of the facility and continue the generation of the income that we're able to use then for other purposes. None of that should blind us to the true metric that we all care about, the metric that I always measure, which is heads and beds. And I think we always we understand the courts and all those are temporary uses during a pandemic, but at the end of the day, the metric that I will always keep using is heads and beds, and that's what we're here for. Any other questions go ahead.
Ron, so we're at 85 total staff right now, approximately? Is that right?
Correct.
And out of those, how many are full-time versus part-time?
I'm going to turn to Cheryl for that. See, you never know when I'm going to come to you for a question. So about 60% is full-time?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
probably say 45 full-time, 45 to 50 full-time, and then the balance part-time.
Can you remember what was our kind of bottom line that we had to reduce our staff to when during the worst of it?
We got down to about 30 employees.
That's right, yeah.
And I will tell you that if not for the courts, that would have gone down even further. So I'm grateful to our staff and to the county and the courts for being able to not only keep us going, but, you know, for a while they were using the first, second, third, and fourth floors of this facility. And it enabled us not only to keep our employees steady, but then it enabled us to even bring some back to do maintenance for the courts.
And to Majid's point, right, and I mean, that's an interesting metric though, right, where we were down to 30 and we're almost tripled that at this point in terms of getting back to where we were pre-pandemic, and with a goal of maybe hiring another 20 to 30 by the end of the year. So, thank you.
And I'll just note that we have Mayor Sellers back, so I'll turn the podium back to him, and I'll say, Mayor, I took over Jeff Applebaum's job today of just rambling. So I managed to make this last a lot longer.
That's
but
right.
we're
I
still
heard,
behind on the
I heard
agenda.
the whole thing.
Trevor, in response to what, we reduced the staff significantly, but also the people that stayed took a 20% pay cut during the pandemic.
Well, in between 20 and 40%. We're happy to be pulling out of it, and we're optimistic about the future.
So things are headed in the right direction. Back. It's good. All right, any other questions about the convention center update? We will now move to the trade show conventions agreement. Ron and Jeff.
All right, this is going to be interesting. So in our management agreement, the ASM management agreement with the CCCFDC, there it says SMG. That was what we were called when we signed the contract. We're now ASM Global. We are not allowed to do, as you can see, number one, adult or pornographic use, and it goes on to kind of explain that. Number two, any use involving drug paraphernalia, tattoos, bingo, gambling, or off-track betting. Number three, any use involving the sale of firearms. And number four, any other use that in the reasonable opinion of the county or the operator may be considered obscene, vulgar to the general public. We do now do a tattoo show, and that has been allowed by the board. And the reason that we're allowed to do that is because of the checks that the tattoo show goes through with the health department. So that has been allowed. The reason I'm bringing this up is really twofold. We now have an opportunity to do a medical marijuana show. Now, in this medical marijuana, and medical marijuana is legal in the state of Ohio, but also in this medical marijuana show, it would be considered what we would consider a consumer show. The main thing that they want to do is help people get connected to resources. They've produced other shows, one in Cleveland at, what's that called, Travis? The Red Space. They've been in the fairgrounds in Akron and in Columbus at the Expo Center, and in Cincinnati, the Shoreville Convention Center. So they haven't done one of the major convention centers, but they have been in Ohio and have done shows in Ohio. There would be paraphernalia on the floor, so I want to make that clear to the board. And if I could see I just want to be clear about this, and this is why I think there's a number two to this. If recreational marijuana gets approved in Ohio, I could see this show changing and morphing into serving their constituency. I'll put it that way. But I wanted to bring to the group, first of all, we have a client that is waiting for a contract from us. I have not wanted to give one until I talk to this group about this, because the drug paraphernalia, this in my mind gets outside of our management agreement. That being said, I know that we've done modifications to allow the tattoo show in. And then I think the second part, I'll let Jeff talk to that piece, is it time to look at this and maybe reassign the prohibited uses? So I'll just leave it, Jeff, to you.
Allow me to ramble for just a minute on this.
There are two lawyers here. So.
That's right. So when this was first done, it was at a different time. And I will make two comments on number two. The reference to drug paraphernalia, obviously the implication was it was paraphernalia associated with non-legal drugs. Clearly, we wouldn't have had a problem if it had something to do with the medical profession and prescription drugs. It was about drug paraphernalia associated with drugs which were not legal. One point would be that to the extent that you have either permitted marijuana, medical marijuana, or even ultimately if it's legalized, the implication was that it was for illegal drugs, not something that was legal. I'll just make that point.
And Jeff, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think I had left something out. I think it's important to know that there would be no marijuana product on the floor on this show.
Correct. It's paraphernalia. But the other thing, even on tattoos, back when this was done, this was before, tattoos became, when it was an industry that, it wasn't, and actually Matt knew about this. Matt was part of this. Before it was, regulated, you didn't have the health department involved, and, it became more of an artistic, sort of more acceptable thing. Now we do permit the tattoo. I don't know if we're still doing the tattoo show, but we permit it. So, one thought would be that maybe we ought to take a look at this prohibited uses list, take a look at what kind of the standard of the industry is in other convention centers, and just make some recommendations overall. Aside from talking to Ron about whether he can do, this one show, maybe it's time for us to just take a look at this full list and see if there's anything we'd want to do to talk about it. Come back with
If I may, Jeff or Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Matt. Go ahead, Matt.
I think this also requires a real analysis of city ordinances, because products and, food products and CBD and other types of paraphernalia, I'm not totally sure what is legal and what is illegal. So I think we should have a really good understanding of what the city ordinances are about what's can be sold. So I just think we have to know that. And I think this, this exhibit should reference the law that as permitted or what is permitted by city ordinance, et cetera. Because I'm not totally clear. You see a lot of things sold in stores and it's very unregulated. I think, Ron, you and I have talked over the years about an event that would sell products, food products. And I think it's just, it's kind of a Wild West on some of those things. So it would be nice to have a good understanding of city ordinances on these kinds of, sales of different kinds of things.
All right.
Right. I think that would all be part of we would go through it. Frankly, I'm not sure what public auditorium does, for example, but I think we would go through it, take a look at ordinances, take a look at what the state of the art is, places like Columbus and their convention center, and just come back with sort of a report on any recommendations we would have to update this language.
All right. I think Trevor has a comment.
Jeff, I would add as part of that analysis though, right, even just looking at gambling, with sports gambling legalized now in the state of Ohio, the Casino Commission still reviewing what guidelines they're going to issue. I think that should be part of this review. We don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know what events here, if any, would want to do something like that to tie it in if it's related to one of the partners with the teams or something like that. So I think that should be included in this review.
All right. So there is I guess, an opportunity to pursue some sort of review and get back to this board with it. Let me just ask, all the board members, are they okay with pursuing a review and getting some type of analysis back?
And I think there's actually two parts to this. Certainly we can do that, but I also think Ron has the immediate need to talk about this one particular show, as I understand it.
That's correct, Jeff. I would offer to the board, perhaps we could check with the city on their ordinances and get back with the board of whether or not this would be a prohibited event within the city of Cleveland. And then if it is not, if it is, then I'll just get back to the board and say we can't do the show. If it is not, I would request that for this temporary, that we would be allowed to do this one show.
My thought process, just in terms of operation, if I'll make the motion and people can vote it down, but basically it's a two-part motion. The first part is to allow this event, provided that it is allowed by city ordinances. You don't have to come back to us. It's provided by, if it's allowed by the city ordinances, you can go ahead with it. If it's not allowed, then you would report to us that it didn't happen. And number two, to authorize legal counsel to look into revising that language and come back to us in the future with recommendations. And quite frankly, if in investigating it, we find out that there are city ordinances that may be outdated, we can make the decision at that point to reach out to the city and say, hey, you may want to re-examine these ordinances. But I think that's the motion, that it's two-part motion. Authorize the immediate event, provided it's allowed by the city ordinance, and number two, for legal counsel to come back to us with recommendations on revision to the language.
All right, so Majid has put a motion on the floor.
Second.
Has moved and seconded. Julie, I want a roll call on this.
Matt Carroll,
Yes.
Jeff Epstein,
Yes.
David Gilbert,
Yes.
Majid McLoof,
Yes.
Trevor McAleer,
Yes.
Michael Obi, Tim Oftermatt,
Yes.
Mayor Sellers,
Yes.
Roshonda Smith.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. Let's move to the next item, all opportunities in partnership with the city. I guess that's under my name, so I guess I'm speaking on it. I just wanted to throw this on I added this to the agenda because I participated for the first time in this, in the St. Patrick's Day Parade, right? And so the route that it went down, downtown ended up at just beyond Public Square. As we circled back, the entire parade is coming around to the southwest corner of Key Center building, right? And I'm looking at everybody, and the opportunity I saw was this event should have ended at Mall B, right? It should have ended there, right? Because I just remember when the Cavaliers won the world title, right? And there's an opportunity for a space to be programmed. My question was, not just for that event, but are there opportunities that could exist with the city of Cleveland that we could partner with the city of Cleveland to do some events that are advantageous to everybody, right? And I think that's one of our charges here, to facilitate opportunities that highlight this city and highlight this county, right? And so I saw it. I'm standing there with a few other people, and we're looking at it. I kept pointing over there. I said, "That's it right there. I see it. I see it." Because I just remember how it was on that championship parade day, right? And so what I wanted to put on the table, do you think, does this board think that we should be pursuing opportunities like that in collaborations and at least ongoing discussions, Dave, with the city, and say, okay, here's the deal, instead of running to the city all the time and saying, like, city, do this, right? Not do this. Maybe we can do something together.
I apologize, I have to run, but before I go, something that's going on right now that I think will make a big difference with this. Destination Cleveland, Greater Cleveland Partnership, and the Cleveland Foundation are right, I'd say, kind of rounding third base on a study of all of the major downtown public spaces. And we have a consultant looking at how they're currently managed and best practices around the country in other cities, with the idea, knowing that we have numerous different organizations from Downtown Cleveland Alliance, the Group Plan Commission, the city, in some cases some others, that are all involved in different ways, our CCCFDC, and quite frankly, it's messy. It's very messy at times, where sometimes hard to know who to go to, how to get those things done. You need to ask 2 or 3 permissions. So the 3 organizations are getting this study done, and it's going to have some recommendations back to the city. But all of those parties, including CCCFDC, are at the table.
Okay.
We actually had a call yesterday morning with the consultants, about a dozen different organizations on that call. So I do think that what you're saying makes a ton of sense, and I think that the ability to do that will be a lot easier. My guess is the goal is at some point during 2022, there is a greater consensus in the community of how all of these spaces are managed, and just to make it a lot easier for things like you're talking about to happen.
Perfect. Well, then you guys are already on top of it. All right, so then when do you think that's going to be completed?
The study should be done in the recommendations in the next 60 days or less.
Okay.
We'll present it to the city, because ultimately all of these are pretty much all owned by the city, but they're all managed by so many different contracts in different ways. So I think my guess is a lot of different groups would weigh in, but ultimately the city is probably the biggest arbiter, I would imagine.
Okay, perfect. Questions? I think my question was answered.
And Mayor, I'm the representative that on this committee. Was like Dave said, it was a call yesterday, and it was a very good call. They're doing a lot of research into this, so I feel positive about it.
I'll just add from the city's perspective, we're open, very open to the conversation, and I think it underscores the need in the conversation on design that we were talking about earlier, to really think about the way in which that design might also extend outside the building. And I know this is work David's been doing as well, to think about how can we kind of make the exteriors of the convention center feel welcoming when there are public events.
Perfect. Great. All right. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. All right, let's move on to the Hilton Hotel update.
And Mayor, I want to introduce the new manager of the Hilton Hotel, Tammy LeBlanc. Tammy, if you'd like to say hello.
There you go. I want to thank you for your great hospitality to you and your team and to everyone here in Cleveland. And I certainly look forward to working with everyone, including yourself, Ron, and your team, and continuing the amazing partnership that has been formed with Hilton and the Convention Center and the destination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, before I'm gonna move.
We have Larry online, Mayor, to do the Hilton
okay.
report.
Thanks, Ron. We'll go very quickly here, but national trends, a lot of the things that Ron already touched on. January was still a very tough month in terms of Omicron impact, but I've certainly started to see improvement both nationally and in Cleveland in February and into March and also into April as well. On a nationwide basis, resort destinations are already above 2019 levels, really due to primarily increased rates. Occupancy is still sluggish, but average rates have gone through the roof. Anybody who's tried to book a trip to Florida recently will get a little sticker shock in terms of what prices are going for down there. What's nice to see is the recovery is starting to come into the urban and top 25 markets. Up until really the last month or so, the recovery had been in secondary markets and resorts. So seeing the top 25 markets in the urban areas come back is nice to see. And the recovery of business travel, it varies by market and by submarket and even by account. If you are, in a hotel that relied on one large account, then that account is not back in the office. Your business travel is suffering. Other markets, we're seeing it starting to come back with return to office. So the slope of the line is favorable, but again, it varies by market. Next slide, please. This is a little bit of older chart, but again, we've said before, nationwide, the recovery is expected to get back to 2019 levels by, originally it was 2024, and now it's coming to 2023. You can see here that some markets are already there through 21 and 22. Cleveland is sort of in that 23 bucket. You don't want to be on the far right-hand side of this chart. This is markets like Washington, D.C., New York, and San Francisco. They've got a long haul to go, though the slope of the line is improving. Their outlook is tough. Next slide, please. In terms of the Cleveland market, still relatively in line with national trends in terms of where we are compared to 2021 and also 2019, within a percentage point or two. No dramatic changes. Next slide. If we look at the downtown set, so these are the big hotels downtown, RevPAR was negative January, but better than it had been, say, over the previous 6 months. The uptick in February is all the NBA All-Star game, did great things for the hotels in the downtown market. March was slightly negative, and we do expect, hopefully start swinging in the positive side here relatively soon. Next slide. Last on the local market, you just met Tammy, who's here. We welcome her to the hotel. Ron touched on it. The group cancellations appear to have slowed, but attendance at some of these events can vary. That 50 to 60% that Ron mentioned. Some can be at 80%, some can be at 40%. It's kind of all over the board, and it can vary by group. We have seen some acceleration on the business travel side. That's that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday road warrior business. It's still sluggish coming back, but we are starting to see some uptick on that. Some of that is seasonality. March is a better month for business travel than, say, January, February. RevPAR in general, also mirroring airport stats. If we look at the combined enplanements, deplanements, the airport's about 86% of 2019 levels. And looking forward, 2023 group remains a concern. It's really going to become a focus on smaller groups and meetings to make up for, we just don't have that mega event in Cleveland in 2023, but slope of the line is favorable, but still very much a concern. Any questions?
Questions? All right, Larry, no questions. Thank you. Hey, Larry, let me ask you a question. For the Hilton, how you guys, you getting feedback? I know and Dave's gone, but the NCAA is hosting the women's Final Four here in 2024. You getting requests out that far?
I would defer to Tammy in the room, but usually the leads start now. They may not have gone definite as of yet, but definitely, it will be, that's one of those, I'll call it mega events. That'll be great to have for 2024.
All right, thank you. All right, we want to change the agenda a bit. The ASM incentive fee vote. I want to talk about that now before we move down.
I don't know that we formally need a motion, but I'll move to adjust the agenda to move the ASM fee to this session.
So there's a motion made to adjust the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jeff and Tim. All in favor, say aye.
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 It's been moved. All right. So I'm turning this over to Jeff here, or to George.
Is going to go through. You can go through it orally, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's in your
Let's go through it orally.
This is the calculation of the incentive fee for ASM for the year 2021. The fee is calculated, is 225,000 potential incentive fee. It is calculated two ways. There's a quantitative component and there's a qualitative component. The quantitative, I wish we had the slide up there, but anyways, the slide is that quantitative component, they have 35% of the fee is by occupancy. And it measures 3 levels of occupancy: exhibit hall occupancy, exhibit hall events, and GCHI occupancy. The occupancy, obviously, for 2021, they were not able to hit their occupancy levels. They weren't changed. It was the benchmark was set at 53%, 49%, and 90%, and they didn't hit any of those. So there was a $0 assigned to that. There was economic impact, 35%, and that's room nights generated. Their benchmark was 77,000 room nights, and they hit 40,000 room nights. So again, it's you have to hit the benchmark to get any of the fee. So nothing was assigned to that. Net revenue attainment. The benchmark was 2.6 million, and they did 3.8. So there was about 30% assigned to that of the fee. So they were able to hit that number, and that was mostly, a lot of that was the courts and other uses of the convention center. And so that was 40,000 that they earned on that incentive side of it. Then there's the qualitative side of the calculation. And that was, the first thing is customer service, asset management report, and business plan attainment. Customer service is done where the customer submits a form that they talk about how they rate the handling of their convention. And it's possible 5, it's 1 to 10 that they rate, and then we analyze that, and the maximum would be 5 points that you could get on those. And they got 4.63, and that's 40% of the incentive fee. The asset report is done by conventional wisdom, and they assign how well they're taking care of the property and that type of thing, and they got a 5 on that. And the third area is business plan attainment, and this is just kind of very subjective. And we looked at their overall performance and what they did, and we felt they did a very good job during some really troubled times, and so we awarded them 5 on that. So that gave them 97% of the $90,000. So the total incentive fee that they earned was $127,000 of the $225,000, and that's our recommendation.
All right, so before we get to the recommendation, I just want Jeff to give people the background on what this incentive fee and calculation is all about.
So when the deal was structured with ASM, the decision was made, there's a methodology in the industry that goes along with what are referred to as qualified management agreements, QMAs. Technically speaking, and QMAs actually restrict the compensation and the type of compensation that a manager can get. There was an agreement early on that although technically we may not, in the case we may not be restricted by a QMA. We are, by the way, with the Hilton Hotel, that is a QMA, but the decision was made that we would compensate them in accordance with those standards anyway, and ASM agreed to that because they're used to that. So what that does, it puts a limit, not only does it put a limit on the fee that can be paid, but it puts a limit on any portion of that fee that can be come out of profits or revenue. And essentially what we do is there is a base fee, which is $225,000 a year. And then that is matched with an incentive which can be no higher than the base fee. And then there are a series of criteria you can use to evaluate that, qualitative and quantitative, and that's what this exercise is. And I will make one comment. You know, the quantitative part of it, ASM gets nothing on any of the quantitative for their incentive despite all their hard work, and that's simply because the numbers weren't there because of COVID. ASM understands that, and has made no request for any adjustments. So really what is happening here is they're doing very good work. They're kind of the victims of what happened with COVID, but that's how the methodology works.
Okay, I think Trevor has a comment.
Jeff, to your point, I mean, just in summary, right? They've 4.8-ish out of 5, I think, of quick math, and looking at those 3 rankings. I mean, I do think ASM has done phenomenal work. The 2021 numbers are out of everyone's control. I mean, we can't do anything about that. They're straight by the numbers. I think, I mean, to some degree, I wish there was something we could do because it is out of everyone's hands, but it is what it is. There hasn't been a request to review that or change it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, so I'd move for approval.
All right, so I just want to.
Mayor, I'd like to make a comment,
Tim.
kind of piggybacking on what's been said. I think the 2021 activity was out of their control, and they did a phenomenal job, as Trevor has said. I might offer for the board to think about, some other sort of one-time bonus for them. Not that we want to spend our money when we don't absolutely have to, but I think they've done great work. And COVID was certainly out of their control. They pivoted quickly with regard to their staff. And their work arrangements. They executed capital improvements that allowed for more hands-free activity in the building. They're a model for COVID-tested types of environments. I would. And I'm just throwing this on the table. I mean, I would certainly suggest that we think about compensating them for that. Well, within now, as Jeff noted, and I'm, at least I used to be, very familiar with how qualified management agreements work. This one is a little weird because, some of you that have been around for a while might remember that this was done during the Recovery Act days. So there were some one-time differences with regard to how these bonds were structured, which I was the investment banker on, by the way, in full disclosure. But bottom line, I think ASM has done an outstanding job. And I hate to see them penalized for something that was out of their control. That's all.
Mr. Chair, can I add to that?
Absolutely.
Just from, I think Matt would agree too, just from the county's perspective, you know, with the courts, right? I mean, there were times where we were talking with Ron where on Thursdays and Fridays, him and his team had to take down the entire court just for a wedding or a reception or an event the weekend. And then by Monday morning, the Court of Common Pleas would come over here and it's like nothing changed, right? I mean, and that was happening quite often. I think more in 2021 because we saw a little bit of uptick in events compared to 2020. I mean, I would almost ask the chair if we perhaps ask our executive director to come maybe at the next quarterly meeting with a recommendation of what that one-time 2021 bonus might look like.
That's exactly what
If I may, go ahead, George.
No, I was just going to say that's exactly, I cannot agree more with the comments that everybody's saying and how they pivoted during the pandemic has been incredible. And the fact that we are in this financial position to be able to undertake the projects. I'm not comfortable making that decision now because I think I need to look more at the numbers, what that means. So I think the right course of action is to ask our executive director to take a look at it, consult maybe with some individual board members who have more experience with this, consult with legal counsel, and then come back to us with what's legal and then to what makes sense, and then we can weigh on it at that point.
The one thing I would mention is that obviously this is one of the points, in fact, we are audited on this, and we have to be very careful that we do that. We can't, and look, I clearly I'm sympathetic, but I want to make sure that we don't take a step that we have a contract, we have a methodology, we have to make sure that we don't take a step that would run afoul of that. So that would have to do with that.
If I just may add, echoing Trevor's comments. I mean, I think if an additional payment went to the favor of Ron and his staff, that would be a lot of basis for that because they are incredible partners. They go far beyond the call, just without question every time. The second thing I'll say vis-a-vis having George come back with a recommendation, if there's a way to find some objective sense of whether this is happening, maybe somebody like Larry or others with expertise could say that this is something that's occurring as a result of COVID, that jurisdictions are looking at adjustments to incentive payments. It'd be nice to have some kind of outside basis to make that decision.
And I thank you, Matt. I very much agree with Matt on that. I think if you think back to how we dealt with the incentives for the COVID vaccination, where the board authorized, if there is a way where this could be, we're meeting our contractual obligations to ASM corporate. The question is, we have a local team who did an incredible job. So if there is a way for this to be structured, I don't know what the legalities of this are. I mean, we're completely in an uncharted territory here. But if there is a way for something to be structured to the local employees and management here, that we're going above our contractual obligations, so long as ASM does not cut it back on the other side, that happens, I think something we should look at.
One of the, and I don't want to dwell on this, one of the things that we got into very early on, even in the ASM negotiation, is our ability, when we set bonuses, our ability to see to it that those go to the individuals involved, not simply back to ASM corporate, and how much we get involved in that. Because obviously what we're talking about here is the effort of the local folks and not,
right.
So we're going to have to, and that was actually a big conversation when the deal was first done, as to, how bonuses, where they go with how they're used. They're not bonuses, they're incentives, by the way. That's one of the things you got to say. So we can look into that. I don't have those answers right now.
All right. So to Trevor's point, let us between Jeff and George go back, take a look at it, come back to this board with some recommendations, and see what could be possible, what's not possible, and let us know, and then we can have that discussion. Right. All right. Because I think I'm in agreement with Trevor and Matt. I mean, this local team has done an outstanding job here. Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Dave O'Neill. I might
Okay.
suggest maybe we should amend the contract. It's clear that you're gonna be facing the same issue for 2022 performance and possibly 2023 performance, because the original performance measures, especially on the qualitative side, were set on a ramp-up period. And I think it would be appropriate to reestablish a new ramp-up period with respect to COVID. Then you have an amendment to the contract and an amendment to those performance measures, which at least will be in effect for the next couple of years. And then we can rejoin that occupancy line. And that would be, I guess, fair. It's based in fact, it's based in market, and it certainly would stand the test of audit.
Well, Dave, in respect to your comments, I think the proper thing to do is to go back into the research and then come back to this group, and that may just be the avenue we go. So let George and Jeff do that and provide us some data back here, and then we can have a additional discussion right at that time. All right. Any other comments? All right, here and now I'm asked for a motion to go into executive session for the purpose to discuss potential litigation.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick?
Yes, go ahead.
For Jeff or Ron even, do we have to, by contract now, approve the existing proposal, or can it wait? Is there?
I would
It can wait.
recommend that you approve.
Mike.
Oh, you do? Okay.
The mic.
My sense is that ASM would like to have their bird in the hand, their bonus that we recommend now. So my recommendation would be that you approve the existing bonus, then we'll determine whether there's any basis for doing anything else.
It's an
So it doesn't
incentive fee,
wait.
Jeff, not a bonus.
Pardon?
It's an incentive fee, not a bonus.
By the way, it is not a bonus, it is an incentive fee.
You said bonus.
I said incentive fee, you said bonus.
No, I'm saying to myself, it is an incentive fee, not a bonus.
All right,
I'll move to.
All right, so there's a motion. There's a motion
approve
made
the incentive fee
by
as
Majid
proposed.
to approve the incentive fee as proposed. Is there a second?
A second.
All right, this has been moved and properly second. Roll call, Julie, please.
Matt Carroll,
Yes.
Jeff Epstein,
Yes.
Majid McClure,
Yes.
Trevor McAleer,
Yes.
Tim Oftermatt,
Yes.
Mayor Sellers.
Yes.
Rashonda Smith.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So that has been taken care of. George and Jeff will get back to us on the secondary part. There's a motion I made, asked for a motion to go into executive session for the purpose to discuss potential litigation. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
It's been moved by Majid. Is there a second? Seconded by Trevor. All in favor, say aye. Oh, roll call. That's right. It's roll call.
Matt Carroll,
Yes.
Jeff Epstein,
Yes.
Majid McClure,
Hey.
Trevor McAleer,
Yes.
Tim Oftermatt,
Yes.
Mayor Sellers.
Yes.
Rashonda Smith.
Yes.
All right, I will ask all those that are not involved in the executive session to please excuse themselves. Yeah. Are we, Julie, ready?
Next slide.
All right. All right.
We just come out.
We just come out. You don't have to have a vote.
Go ahead.
All right, next slide. All right, so we are on the portion of the agenda that as we return to for any new business. Anyone with any new business here?
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank George and Ron to ensure the live stream ended up happening and the IT folks, because I know there was some discussion about potentially not being able to do it or
Yeah.
whatever. So I appreciate
It was a great call.
the pivot.
Great call, Trevor.
Yes.
Julie's the most flexible person in the building. Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't also comment, we talked quite a bit during the ASM incentive fee about the incredible role that ASM did in our local team here. So did our own staff, George and Julie, we did.
Yeah,
Just want to
absolutely.
recognize that as well.
Absolutely. All right, no new business. Excuse me, any additional business, we'll move. You know that the next quarterly meeting is on Friday, July 22nd, 2022, at 8:30 a.m. And Julie and George have taken great strides to make sure there are various ways for people to participate. So I want to thank you guys for that. All right. Nothing else is on the agenda. I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn. All
So
right,
moved.
so it's been moved and seconded, and let the time be reflected at 10:58 a.m. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you guys for participating. Have a
Thank
good one.
you. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.